Testing. All right, y'all. I'm available inside Operation Code's Slack team in the live coding channel if you'd like to ask any questions as I work. Operation Code is an amazing organization kind of built towards helping veterans get into the tech industry. Me and a few other developers originally set out creating their website last January, and at least speaking for myself, it was interesting building the project while I was learning React. Looking back, there are a lot of things that I would do differently if I could start over. And for a variety of reasons, I've been given kind of permission to kind of do so. It's a little less complicated this time going around because the first time we created the application, it was using Ruby on Rails MVC. And so switching over to a kind of modern infrastructure of microservices between the back end and the front end was a whole dynamic shift. This time, however, we're sticking still with Rails backend and our React frontend. The difference, however, is I'm going to be setting it up with a bunch of cool little toys and kind of like best practices going forward. And one of the big reasons is that we think we are kind of riding on the old successful website in terms of SEO benefits, and I'm worried that someday, since we don't have server-side rendering set up currently, that we will end up losing that spot. Another reason is because we advertise our repository as beginner-friendly, and currently I don't think many people would agree that it is so. With that being said, the commands that I've done to get to this point, I ran npx create next app, and then I kind of copy-pasted the folders over. If you'd like to see what that does, you can check it out right here. Sorry. Create next app. It's from an organization called Segment.io. npx is a cool little way to do like a one-off to make sure you're always using latest. You should use it for generators like create React app and create next app, obviously, like we just did. After that, there was a bunch of stuff that I wanted to set up without boring you guys as to why, like transform runtimes and Webpack configuration. When the repository itself is made public, you can definitely check out the source code for yourself to see why it is. This GitHub folder, this bin folder, and some of these other files kind of came from before what was already in place on Operation Code's current website, like this Travis YAML file and our linting rules. In terms of explaining the few reasons as to why, Nextbabel allows us to write kind of like the latest JavaScript, arrow functions, and it also handles a lot of the Webpack configuration. As you can see, the folder is pretty simple right now. This is kind of the structure that it spits out when you run create next app. It gives you a static folder, pages, components, and then a configuration folder right here. So the one thing that I want to work on right away is to get CSS modules working. Normally, like if it was my own personal project, I'd be using CSS modules with Sass, but since we advertise ourselves as beginner friendly, it's just one less thing to learn, so we just use vanilla CSS. Shoot, I guess I was showing you guys the browser the whole time. Oh, wow. I will show you the repository really quickly and show that. So again, a lot of these files were already there. The Create Next app just generates a static folder with favicon pages where you do your containers and components where you do your reusable components. A .next folder where the build goes, and then it gives you a configuration file, the next.config file. So this is what we're going to be editing right now to enable CSS modules with CSS. So going back to the browser. Just checking out some things before I went over there. So the great thing about Next is they have so many examples. Look at this. Holy cow. Want to bet they have modules somewhere in here? Oh, that's awkward. CSS with Next CSS? Well, I've already known that I've done it. What about Sass? With Next Sass. Let's see if this example is what I'm looking for. I'm not going to be using Sass, but I wanted to see if they've got CSS modules enabled. Let's do a quick little Google search just in case. If you have any questions for me, just so I can see the notification, please at me on that channel. Wonder if it... Oh, okay, cool. It is CSS modules. All right, so here's what we're looking for. So the first thing we need to do is go to our editor and run, it says yarn add Zeit next CSS. So that while that's installing, it kind of shows you the usage here. So if I want CSS modules, this is how I'll be importing our CSS modules right here with CSS. This is in the next config file. All right, so let's go back to the editor. So it says at the top to define with CSS. That's using a plugin, an official Zeit plugin for Next. CSS. Cool. Don't worry, I didn't type this calculating. That's a VS Code extension that's telling me the import cost. Sometimes it hangs, which is annoying. So then module exports. It looks like we do with CSS. Cool. I like that little decorator pattern. Kind of like how Storybook works out. And then CSS modules true. And then it doesn't say it on this documentation, but this is kind of from our current setup, some CSS loader options. This will kind of make sure that class names never have duplications. So if you could imagine if you can imagine somebody doing class name in some other file, and then so if this is a different file and somebody has the same class name, CSS modules works to resolve these two class names behind different files by appending like a hash right at the end. So you'll never have colliding class names across files, which is a nice thing. That's one very old problem that the Cascade has if you are not careful about how you write typical CSS. Okay, cool. Let's see if it works out. So on my terminal, cool. Let's see if we can do. I have an alias YD that just does yarn and yarn dev. I think I already. I'm just gonna do it. Interesting. Got an error. Going great so far. Okay. If we go back to my editor, I made the variable with CSS being all caps, but in here I did that. Oops. Let's just do that anyways. Nah. Look how decisive I am with my variable names. Alright, now we should have no problem. So let's go back to the terminal. Yarn dev. Please work. Please. Yeah, it should work. Sick. Open that up. Let me go to the browser for you. Here's our view. We're getting going. Now what I want to see is if, so I haven't broken anything yet, but I do want to see if CSS modules is working. So back to the editor. Let's go ahead and make a new little component. I'm going to copy paste some code so that you don't have to watch me design a component right here, right now. And then bloop. Oh, no, that's not quite right. All right, and then let's put that in a folder. Caps this, or rather, title case it. Put it in the folder. Make a CSS file. And then I'm going to copy some more code over. Boop. Cool. Alright, and then just so we're clear that it is indeed our stuff, we will do violet. Pretty. Okay, we got that component done. My editor is really complaining about style and it's not working out, which is unfortunate, but one day we'll set that up. Alright, so now in index, let's go ahead and do import button from components button, so close, button, cool. Now we can use this button, and again we're just looking to see that the styles are being applied, and then we'll also look at the DOM to see what the styles look like. What's this API? href on click, nothing's required. Cool. I like how I have color. Does that even do anything? Do I inline the styles? I do. Okay. Well, that's not helpful. Anyways, hello there. Cool. Where did I miss? Oh, one more. Cool. And then we'll just do another one and say that. And then we'll do that. Cool. Good thing you can't see this browser. No, I'm just kidding. Doesn't look like it worked out too hotly there. Can't resolve class names in the button. Oh, that's fair. Goodness gracious. I'm using, so that copy pasted code that I have uses this thing, class names, which it doesn't have yet. I'm gonna eventually definitely use class names, so we'll just add that. It is not a dead dependency. And then I'm gonna go back to the browser and I'll refresh. Love me. No? No. What if I rebuild? Let's try that. That looks more promising, right? Like this. Right, y'all? Right? Right? Sick. There are the no content buttons, obviously, as you can tell. My stuff is working in isolation perfectly. You know, that's what would happen to your production buttons when you don't put content in them, right? Right. Alright, so back to the editor, or rather back to the browser. Okay, so one problem is that this first button is not violet, like we mandated. Although, I think that's because of my poorly written, yep, it is. Poorly written button component. And if you know anything, if you know a little bit about CSS precedence, because this is inline style, it takes precedence over what I've put here. So, we tried. I can just do color equals red, and we'll see the difference, and I'll also throw some content in them so we can actually see. Cool, cool, red, blue, and if I go back to the browser, there they are, red and blue. Sick. Back to the editor. Oh, wait, no, I'm going to show you the DOM now. Okay, so we're going to inspect the DOM. And again, we're verifying that CSS modules is working out. Can you even see that? Going to take a peek at OBS. Inception. Does not look like you can see it. I wonder if I pair the panel, if you can see it. Do you see it now? Yes, you do. Sick. All right, good enough. Okay. So again, we're looking at the class names. Okay, so here are the buttons. So as you can see, remember we talked about that hashing mechanism? So because it's from the same style sheet, this is kind of like the identifier. So this is, so if we go back to the hashing mechanism, I will show you that file. So here's how the hash is defined. So name, I believe, is from the component file. Local is the style sheet's class name, and then this is a randomly generated hash with 5 characters. So let's go back to the browser. So it is from the button component. It is, the class name is capital button, and here's that hash, and then there's 2 underscores before it. I can kind of prove this really quick by changing the class name in the editor. So if I change it to a lowercase button, is that going to affect the component? Let me check really quick. Yes, cool. Good thing I checked. Styles button, cool. Okay, so I had to change this because this is how CSS modules works, right? You import styles, you import the style sheet as if it's like some kind of JS module, and then you reference it in the JSX, and you treat it like an object with the key button, which is just the class name. So anyways, I changed it to lowercase, so if I refresh the page and I go to the browser, we should see that now the class name's second button is lowercase. Sick. Cool. Confirmed. Illuminati confirmed. Alright. Okay, so we've got CSS modules working. We've got Next working. For those of you who don't know, Next is an amazing project developed by Zeit. The reason why I wanted to leverage it when I'm re-architecting operation code going forward is because server-side rendering comes built in with every route. The next thing we're about to dive into is something that I haven't actually worked with, so I will be kind of like reading and perusing through docs. Sorry about that if that's a waste of time for you, but the next thing that I want to set up is React Router within this. I'm going to revert the changes I made. Actually, no. Cool. Definitely recommend checking out the documentation for Next and using it in some project at some point for funsies. Oh, actually, you know what? So I've set up, I've set up CSS modules, but I'd like to take it a step further as the documentation keeps on talking about with post CSS plugins. It's going to be a little bit more copy-paste, but essentially I want to get auto-prefixing established so that I don't have to write like, you may have seen prefixes necessary for certain CSS attributes, like if I do MS, so that's for Edge and IE11 sometimes, and then if you wanted to do Moz, those are Mozilla prefixes. Auto-prefixer kind of just searches for all the CSS attributes you're using and appends any attributes that are needed based off the browser that the user uses. So that's definitely a helpful tool because I don't want to have to remember. I don't want to have to remember when and when not to add a prefix. So I'm going to create. Oh, not there. Let's do a post C. Wait, I wonder if I can make it an RC. Post CSS RC. Is that a thing? Cool. Let's do that. There we go. RC. RC syntax. Does that make this? I'm kind of doing a copy paste, but I made it a config file, and there is a reason to just make it an RC file. I don't know if I'm going to run into problems by doing that. Cool. You know what? Let's not. I don't want to try to do something I haven't tried yet, especially on something so annoying. No, don't put it in button. So post css.config.js paste. So here's the browsers that my autoprefix will be looking at. And then let's see if nextconfig is using it. Not quite, but it does look like, looking at package.json of this other project that I'm just kind of trying to mirror, it does look like I need to add some dependencies really quick, so I'm going to do yarn add auto prefixer and prop types. Wait, what does package.json look like currently? Sick. Yeah, that's good. I do want prop types eventually. And then also, you know why? I know why it's complaining. I need to add some dependencies also for both my linters. So let's do yarn add dev dependency for ESLint config. So if we look at my ESLint config, I've got these plugins and I need to install them essentially. So ESLint config, sorry about this boring stuff. Airbnb, ESLint plugin, JSX, ally, prettier, style lint, style lint, config standard. And you know what? I don't I'm gonna leave prettier. Maybe I'll integrate it in the CI, or a pre-commit hook at some point. But I don't think I need it because I have it set up in my editor, and as long as I got the prettier RC file, should be good to go. All right, all those things are installing. Boom, good to go. I should probably be committing and stuff, but that would be boring for you, so we're not gonna do it. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to the terminal, rebuild, see if I can get any problems, go to the browser, and reload that page. It's building, it's building, it's building, and it's built. Cool. Sick, no problem so far. Back to the coding. Why does it scare me that it's just 15.6 minutes? Do they not sync it up with the app? Interesting. Anyways, so I have no more, so we're entering uncharted territories. That's kind of like the work that I've already done on my own time. So now you should be looking at the browser. I'm going to ditch that example, but I do want, let me see, did I get everything else in there? PostGIS plugin. Oh, right here. Cool, so it looks like it just kind of works. Oh, and it specifies to create this file, so I'm glad I did. Okay, so let's go back to the other examples. So here's Zeit. I want Next.js. And I want their examples folder with their many examples, and I want to look up a router. Using router, using with router. I want router. I was actually looking at this just a second ago, and I was actually pretty confused. Is this using React Router? Okay. Let's see what's going on there. There's no actual React Router dependency. And I looked at these folders and I see nothing to indicate. Is routing just kind of handled? Oh, I bet you that's what it is. Let's investigate. Okay, so I'll open the browser. I will go to the editor. Let's make a new page. Let's do about JS. And then we'll kind of copy index for the most part. I'll get rid of the buttons over here, or I'll leave them there, and then on about I won't have them at all. Okay, so I've done that. I'm in the terminal rebuilding, even though I don't think you need to, but okay, you should be looking at the browser now. If I reload, okay, now to test that just kind of happens automatically. If I go to this page, I should see most of the same page except no buttons. Boom. Sick. All right, let's continue looking at these documentations. So routing looks to happen automatically. Parameterized routing and use with router. I'm going to open the parameterized routing just to kind of scope it out really quick. You know what? We don't need that in operation code, but we might need with router. Oh, I bet like with router could be useful if you have like a container within a container, which we would probably have on things like our sign up process. Components. Active link. Oh, okay, cool. So, ooh, router. Okay, with router, next router. Okay, next has its own router. That is a good clue. Okay. So, and it comes in built in, obviously, because their package.json doesn't reference any of it. So pages about. We'll have to find where they use with router. Here it is, right here. Router. Should not be rendered via SSR. Cool. Okay, I'm going to keep looking at examples. We are nearly kind of done with the setup of that, and the next thing I'll be creating. The next thing that I kind of want to do is I want to bring over all of the reusable components we've established in operation code. And then I want to kind of create a storybook instance, and after that, which I'm very familiar with, by the way, I'll probably be looking at the documentation just for like instructions, just to get the copy paste down, but I've set up Storybook a few times now, so it should be pretty quick. The next thing that I've never done before is setting up testing like Jest configuration. Once that all comes together, we'll be able to finish off our Storybook server so that every reusable component you use, it has a Storybook instance so that anybody can kind of inspect the component in isolation and see how it's leveraged. And the other benefit of setting up Storybook after we do Jest is we can use Storybook snapshots, which means that every story you create generates its own test, which is nice. I'll kind of add a comment of all the, I mean, no, I guess I already listed in the landing page what technology I'm using. All right, so Let me see if I need anything else here. Routing happens intrinsically. We just learned that, which is great. So I can just make pages and pages, and everything else is a component. And maybe eventually you can create like a container folder if necessary. Cool. All right, let's get into creating Storybook. So I'm showing you the editor, which you don't actually need right now. Let's go back to the browser. Storybook. If you've never used Storybook before, I'm hoping to contribute some open source tonight, creating a chapter in this website on using the add-on knobs. But this is a great website for learning how to set up and leverage Storybook. Cool. Quick setup. Storybook for React. React. All right, cool. Going back to the terminal, we're going to do yarn add dev dependency. I'm actually going to make it a production dependency because eventually, even though Storybook typically is leveraged as a local dependency, eventually I want to deploy this as part of this continuous deployment process with the actual application. Therefore, it needs to be an actual dependency. So, Storybook React and Apple Core. Cool. That's all it's asking for. Going back to the browser. I might open up actually like my works folder just so I can not waste anybody's time and show the more important things rather than copying documentation. So I'm gonna go to work. This is Storybook, it's nothing proprietary, so don't yell at me. Cool. Agreed. Okay. So, well, I mean, going back to just kind of getting a quick example of what needs to happen. Essentially, there's a few things you need to do once you have the dependencies installed. First and foremost is to create a Storybook config folder. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to make a new folder and do oh, no, not under GitHub. .storybook. Within this folder, we need to create a config file and also a Webpack config file in case we want to customize our Webpack configuration. There's a few other things that you can choose to expose or can choose not to expose. One of them being preview head.html. I'll kind of show you how I use all of these, but I want to create them right now before I go forward. Again, I need to do add-ons.js, and eventually I'm going to use a backgrounds add-on, which requires its own folder. The last thing I want to do is storybook.css. This might not get leveraged at all, but essentially this is what's these are styles that are applied to every story. One use case would be to create a container and center things vertically and horizontally so they always appear in the center of the preview panel in the Storybook. For those of you that are not familiar with Storybook, they have a nice little examples page, and you can kind of see how they're leveraged across, the web. I think Wix has a pretty good one. Interesting. This is new. Cool, yeah. So if we go to buttons, button layout, so they have kind of like their own proprietary like add-ons they made with this kind of emulates the knobs behavior. But as you can see as a developer, if you want to see what a standard button looks like, this is a really nice tool to see what it looks like in isolation, to see what its hover state looks like, and it kind of shows you when these events fire. And you can kind of toggle things to see what it looks like or if it differentiates the appearance. So yeah, really cool stuff. Storybook is great for designers and developers. Okay, so back to our editor. Again, I don't want to waste too much of your time, so I'm going to kind of copy paste a few things here. Actually, I'll do it line by line. React. From React, of course, you're going to need React to render things in JSX. Add decorator. This is, so Storybook uses kind of like a decorator pattern, and specifically it also redefines decorator for Storybook's own purposes as something that gets applied to stories. So kind of like an add-on decorator. Figure from Storybook React. The reason I did add decorator is because I am going to create that example global decorator that I just defined of vertically and horizontally centering components in the preview panel. Eventually I'll have backgrounds installed, which is a fun little add-on that allows you to change the background color of the preview panel. Set options. This is an add-on that allows you to easily configure some global things within Storybook. For instance, the name that appears on the upper left corner panel. So we'll call this operation code. Let's leave it on that. I'm gonna, instead of talk, I'm gonna write a comment out so people know what this does. So essentially I'm going to, and I'll just do it right now so you can kind of see the pattern going. I'm going to have a common folder, and I'm going to kind of create another, because there are components that are not necessarily like reusable UI components. Gonna put, and so like button, for instance, is clearly like a very reusable component, so I'm going to move that into that folder, which is of course going to break the build, so I'm going to handle this right now before I fudge that up. I can delete this about page. Cool. So yeah, now you can see I've got this pattern going down, and eventually so there is a, I don't want to debate I'm not going to over-optimize with myself, but something that happens at work that I find interesting is that we'll create kind of like dunder folders to kind of hide the other files away from what you just kind of need immediately. And you know what, I'm gonna do that. So for our stories, we're gonna just make a stories folder, and then we're gonna do button.stories.js. And you can see that that file name matches this pattern exactly. So now we go down to the actual variable name. Require context. Components. I actually don't know what that argument does. Let's check it out. Doesn't say. That's a damn shame. It does something. Let me know if you know. There's the regex pattern. And then this is all, I'm not just BSing this, this is all kind of documented within Storybook. I can show you really quickly on the browser. It's just so you know I'm not doing anything crazy. So here's that, and essentially I've just kind of pulled this out of the actual function because eventually, going back to the editor, Potentially, maybe you don't want to just have Storybook for the reusable UI components. What if you want to document maybe like a very weird component that's not necessarily like a very atomic reusable component? Maybe you've got like a complicated calendar thing that you want to be able to have people interact with. So you'd have to define like a new file space. And so it just kind of makes things a little easier, and you can order them from here as well. And by order, I mean you can order how they appear in Storybook and from like top to bottom in that little index. Our common components, .keys, .for each. Cool. Here's that global decorator I wanted to make for you. I'm going to use React's CSS API. Display flex. Justify content center. And then we're just going to kind of define an arbitrary min height. Cool. Nearly there. Now we use add decorator, and for every story, we wrap it in a div that uses the styles we just defined. Boom. See, that's one global decorator. Here's another one. Backgrounds, which we don't have defined yet, nor do we even have the dependency installed. And the last thing, configure, load stories, do it on a module basis. Cool, that's our config file. Hope you enjoyed that rocket blast through. Again, let me know if you have any questions about this. We're gonna kind of set it up fully before I deploy it and show you that it's working. At the very least, let me get backgrounds, set options installed. I guess that's all we need. Yeah, we can go that far. Backgrounds. I guess we'll hard code backgrounds. Anyways, so I'm going to need those add-ons. So I'm going to go to the browser to remember those add-on paths. Storybook. Let's say backgrounds. Wait. Oh, end of life. No, that's not what I want. No. Storybooks. Okay. And then add-ons are in here. Shout out to the official Storybook Slack team. It's supremely helpful. They're an amazing group of people. Hope I haven't wasted too much of their life. Here's the backgrounds add-on, which provides you the necessary instructions. So that's going to be yarn add, and again, it's not a developer dependency because we will deploy this eventually. Add on backgrounds. And I also need Storybook. I'm just going to go ahead and guess here. Set options. You know what? That sounds like a terrible idea on the two-word item. So let me show the browser again. Is it options? Cool. Glad I didn't do that. That was totally wrong. It is just options. Done. Alright, and then, oh, did I make? Yeah, okay, now I've got this add-on file. So now, as my comments indicate, the order of your imports indicate the order they appear as a tab in that bottom preview field on those examples. You'll kind of see what I mean later. For now, I don't want these yet because I haven't installed them. Same with this one. I will install those later. That's kind of like my ideal setup. And eventually also we'll have story shots, but that's not a visible one. So those add-ons are now registered. And the last thing, not necessarily the last thing, there's a few more things we need to do, but I'm getting there. Preview head. I guess I'll do... Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to do preview head. Don't want to overrun this. Delete that. So we do need this on body, background, color, inherit. This will allow the backgrounds add-on to really take over. Cool. And now, so I'm going to show you the browser because I do need to kind of look this up. I have like a dynamic system set up at work, but I want to just kind of hard code some potential backgrounds for now. So here we go. So this is kind of how we're going to do it, it looks like. As a global, do they have usage as a global decorator? Here it is. This is how you use it as a global decorator. Add decorator with backgrounds. I'm going to copy this and bring it over. So back into the config file, and we're going to do it like this instead. Boop. Okay, and then just going to I'm going to go to Operation Code's branding page to get the right colors. Down here. Okay, so here's what I'm looking at. I'm going to just look at the editor for now. So I'm going to name it blue, OC blue. Let's call it OC blue. The hex value is 249 CBC. That is not going to be my default. Hell no. That would be really annoying. Well, let's do OC red. And that is D1665A. Cool. Name slate. Value 47566B. I'm going to copy paste now. We're going to do their like off-white color as the default. Mist is what they call it. So this will be our default. Cool. Looks good to me. Closing that, going back. Just want to see if I've missed anything. So the first thing I need to do now is kind of create this, kind of a mimic of this story, actually. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Going back to the editor. I've already got this file open. Let's do that. After I kind of show you storybooks in the works, I also want to set up some Webpack aliases, or some folder aliases, because that's kind of like a common thing. Like, I should never see more than a single ... Especially in this file, I don't want to see them at all, honestly. But that'll do for now. So if you go one up level, it'll be button.js. Cool. Don't have that set up yet. And so here's kind of the general structure that it goes with. So stories of, and this is in the preview panel, you'll see something clickable. And so I'm going to say default. And I'm going to open up the component so I can see the API that I'm referencing. I'm going to hide that. Okay, I'm going to delete this story. Where's the syntax error? Interesting. Anyways, on click, I don't have action set up yet. Cool. And I don't even need that, right? Because we're just defining, none of these are required props, so I should theoretically be able to just do this, and that would be technically the default. All right. You ready for this? Here we go. That should be... Is the script defined in there now? It's not. Okay, so the one thing that I was just looking at, so I installed without kind of like their CLI tool. And so it should touch on this. Yeah, here it is. Okay, I need this script essentially. There's another script for building it, but we won't get to that point right now. So I need to run that. And I'm going to do it at port 9000. And 1, sure, whatever, that's a good default. Save that. And now I should be able to do yarn storybook. And it'll probably break me. I have a lot of faith in myself, as you can tell. Localhost 9001. Nope, not 90,001. That would be incorrect. That's what I want. Show me the money. Or show me a blank screen. That's like almost the same thing. Okay, here we go. Lots of errors. Okay, cool. That's not helpful. Interesting. I'm going to look over the documentation really quick. I think maybe I forgot like a config step. Like perhaps I needed to install something for decorators to actually even work. Oh my goodness. How did that happen? Options. Do I still have an error? Yes. Well, I had a typo here, so at least I got that. Because I don't know when I would have found that, if ever. Oh, there's a Babel RC I could probably bring in. Let's see if that's good enough. Rebuild. Alright, I haven't rerun it yet. Work! Sick! Okay, so Babel RC helped out because I was trying to use things that the default Babel config wasn't prepared for. This error, however, we could tackle. So obviously I have a typo in my CSS file. I'll show you what it is. Obviously I have it. Appropriate loader to... Oh. We have another Webpack config. So basically, Storybook was complaining that it has no idea how to handle this syntax because we're importing it as a JavaScript module and CSS modules isn't working yet in our Storybook's Webpack config. So, editor. Gonna close all these, gonna close that. Gonna open Webpack config. I might be able to just kind of copy pasta. Yeah, I think I might. Okay, let's do this. Let's go through what we need to. Optional X, do a Babel loader on every JavaScript file, and use our custom Babel config, which we don't I don't think we need to do this because of the Babel RC. So I'm going to delete that. We are not using Sass. There might be a way to simplify this, and I might go into it later. But essentially, this is saying for every JavaScript file, use Babel Loader. This is just Webpack. I mean, I say just Webpack. It's fucking amazing, but it is weird to learn the API, but you kind of get used to it. It's just a bunch of loaders and plugins, essentially. So now for every CSS file, although that wouldn't be correct. Oh, okay, so this is saying for that global CSS file. Fair. So we're going to call this Storybooks CSS precisely, right? Because that's what this file name is. Cool. Don't need Sassler, so I can ditch this. What is this? CSS file. Okay, cool. And then for every CSS file, excluding this one, because we've already handled it. Nope, I didn't want to paste that there. I'll paste that here. What the? Thank you. The mouse did not like me. Cool, 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 super cool. This is all cool. Don't need Sassler. What is my, do I have any of these loaders? Okay, so the next thing I'm guessing, these are for file imports. Why do I have it twice though? I don't think I need this twice. I don't, definitely don't. Or 3 times? Oh, okay, wait. Was that file name different? WAF to regex is not good. No, this is just duplicate. I don't need that. Why do I have any of this? Let's ditch the URL loader. Oh, because, okay. So my work has a custom preview HTML and it has font stuff in it. SVG is cool. I don't want to over-optimize or pre-optimize rather, so let's not do that. Okay, so now I should be getting yelled at for trying to use loaders that I don't have installed. Or it'll not help me with the warnings it's giving me, but I'm fairly certain I should be installing these loaders so that it actually has the ability to use them. Okay. Reloading that page, and okay, cool. I'm getting a different error this time. With backgrounds is not defined. So with backgrounds config. Oh, cool, right. I need to do with backgrounds from Storybook add-on backgrounds. Cool, that should do that, hopefully. Okay, so the tab is indeed showing up on my preview tool, which is a good sign, but still having this. Can't resolve. Let's go back to the instructions for that add-on. That would be Storybook add-ons, and then that was backgrounds. Let's see what the README says about using itself. This is what I've got going on, right? I'm gonna just copy paste in case I got a typo. Oh, I did have a typo. I'll show you what it was too. that will funk things up because it's not a relative path. It is an absolute. Cool. So I'm going to rebuild, and then I'm going to show you the browser, and I'm going to refresh, and it's loading. Cool. That's not helpful. Interesting. What do you mean you're not a function? Very strange. Let's say I stop trying to use an add-on so I can actually see what the real error is anyways. Because maybe it's an underlying issue. Woo! That's sick. Let's see what this is. This is probably because of those plugins, but... Babel next. Whoa. Look how bad. This looks wrong. Find an invalid property. Oh, that would be... No. Plugin 0. That's the same repository. Build error next. Here we go. This looks more helpful. Oh, what is my version of Babel Core? Interesting. Is that even so? I know that there have been problems with Babel 7 and a lot of packages using it before it's out of beta. Potentially, this could be my fault for just running Babel Core install. I'm going to look at my package.json, my work file. No, that shouldn't be it. Okay, going back to... The only reason that was a suggestion was potentially because of this comment. Thank you very much. Oh no, this is research. Oh boy. This is gonna be fun, y'all. I wonder. I'm gonna keep scrolling instead of seeing just a bunch of configs. Looking for something with lots of emojis. Is this studio still open? It is still open. The next thing that I would need to do then is probably make sure that I have all these things set up. Precedent. Okay, so let's do yarn add Babel preset in. I'm gonna take a 5-minute break. All right, back at it. I installed a few Babel plugins, and I got a little farther. Now it's complaining about my config having an unexpected extra option passed to some kind of preset. I might change the order that I list these presets. No, that shouldn't be it. Yeah, that's not it. So it's going to be this. Let's see what happens now. New error. Well, same error, but in different places this time. Yeah, so I've never integrated Next components with Storybook, so this is a new one. Might have to research a little bit. Storybook with Next. Well, looks like that's going to be its own little topic. I think I'll put the Storybook development on hold, and because I'm gonna come back. It looks like it's a problem that other people are facing, and it's closed, which is interesting. But that's something hopefully maybe I can work to solve and kind of post what I've got to try to help other people out. The next thing, once I get Storybook going, is I'm going to get Jest configured. But I think I'll make that a separate video after I figure it out instead of bumbling live. So yeah, anyways, again, going through the benefits, if you haven't heard of the technologies that are listed on the lander, Next.js, the benefit of it is it provides like a very simple folder structure, and a lot of things come out of the box. The main thing that comes out of the box is built-in server-side rendering by route. And it's also very, very easy to configure other kind of code splitting to make a very, very fast website, essentially, and small website. Very performant. It also takes a lot of the configuration just kind of out of the picture for you completely. Jest is a testing library, and used in conjunction with other plugins like React Test Renderer, it allows you to completely test any kind of JavaScript file you might have in your repository. We're going to link it up with Storybook to kind of auto-generate snapshot tests on a per component basis. And I already kind of showed Storybook in the video, but Storybook's great because it allows new developers coming into the picture to see some UI components used in isolation. So it's kind of, one, you know exactly what arsenal you have available when coding, and two, you can kind of prevent yourself from any gotchas by seeing the component work in isolation. So both of those things will be developed in time, and if you're interested in further development, join us in OC projects on the Operation Code Slack team. Have a good one.